video will show some of the problems with the layout as far as electrical noise and what I'm calling chatter. It's currently set, this is the main inside interchange program, currently set that each train should be making 5 laps around the track before being switched. But in this case, the trains at most are doing only 1 or 2 laps around because of electrical noise. Right now the throughway train is in the track, and when the train gets to this area and enters this block detect, which is the crossing flasher, that is when it counts how many laps the train has done around. And as you can see, it only made 1 lap around before switching. If I go over to the input blocks, now for this test I've actually turned off the capacitive compensation that I have. I've added capacitors to the input block to try to smooth out the signal coming in. And as you can see, it gets very, very glitchy without the capacitive block. That's right here. Now I've turned on the capacitive block, which will, for the most part, smooth out the inputs to the block to try to compensate for the chatter or electrical noise. It does work, but doesn't work as well as it should. One of the problems, of course, is you can see the optical sensors, which is that block of 4 lights. Right now there's only 4 optical sensors hooked up. Still chatters because they're trying to get the extreme angle for the optical sensors to not detect a clear beam between the train cars. And if you could probably notice too, even some of the block detects, depending on which train is running, can be a little glitchy. So next I'll show the attempted compensation for this. This part of the screen just shows the counter and how many laps the train has made around and which train is actually running. I'm not able to change how many times the train can go around by that number. What I found at times is you can see this lap counter will increment as the train enters the crossing flasher, but now I've also even noticed when the train exits that block heading into the first switch, this sometimes will increment again. That's because the wheels, as it makes and breaks the contact with the block detect, sometimes causes a double count. I've made a new subroutine here called chatter, which will take each input and block detect and run it through a timer for half a second. And then it will set individual bits, which will then be used as the actual inputs. This will hopefully try to eliminate the chatter, but this right now is just a test. I've added the subroutine and then just simply jumping to it, but for right now I'm not using it. So the main program hasn't been altered. What I'm doing for the test right now is I've created this new screen which shows the actual inputs from the input block and then the bit values of the timed blocks as a comparison. The actual inputs are the green lights, the timed blocks, the anti-chatter part is the red blocks. The plan is, hopefully, if this subroutine works properly, it can avoid optical sensor chatter, because like there's a gap between each car, between the locomotive and each car. Even with an extreme angle on the optical sensor, I'm finding that sometimes the beam clears momentarily as the train passes by, so it may be impossible to get a totally angle that would avoid this. And as you can see, as it passes through the different optical sensors, causes like a little chatter on, but with the timer it doesn't actually set the bit until about a half a second to compensate for this problem. I'm just going to be observing this for a little while But I think this is on the right track as far as being able to solve the chattering problem with the block detects and with the optical sensors, which should also make the hardware build a little bit easier for the final layout.